Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and today I want to talk about Gremlins 2, which was one of my favorite movies as a kid. And I haven't seen it since for many years, and I finally rewatched it, and I noticed a whole bunch of things which I totally missed on as a kid, and so I'm glad I rewatched it. By the way, the movie aged pretty well. It's still a very good movie, even watching it now as an adult. Still very entertaining. And I decided to do this review mostly to talk about all those things I noticed which I never understood as a kid, such as that character Mr. Clamp being basically a parody of Donald Trump. And I never knew who that was as a kid, and now that I rewatched this video I suddenly noticed, oh, Mr. Clamp is kind of similar to Donald Trump, and that guy is played by the same actor who played Lionel Luthor on Smallville, and he was in Batman and Robin as a mad scientist, and that's also another reason why it's so fun to rewatch these older movies, because you see a whole bunch of actors who you didn't know about when you watched it as a kid, and suddenly you recognize this whole bunch of actors that you saw in so many other places, even ones that had very minor role in this movie, and yet later they were awesome as other characters in other things. For example, Tuco from Breaking Bad appears as a delivery guy in a few scenes, so that was fun to see him as a younger guy. Also, the holographic doctor from Voyager, who plays that annoying boss. And by the way, in the 90s, I remember I saw him in a lot of movies, always playing those kinds of annoying characters. I think he was in the movie Inner Space, playing the villain. So he's kind of like a typecast of an annoying guy you want to have in movies. And also in Voyager, when he appeared in Voyager as the holographic doctor, he was also kind of being annoying in a kind of comedic way. And also in Stargate SG-1, he was kind of that annoying politician or something. So we have Lionel Luthor in his younger days, clean-shaven and playing kind of a parody of Donald Trump, only here it's Mr. Clamp. We also have Christopher Lee as a mad scientist fighting gremlins, which, by the way, I might do a parody spoof of that with that scene of him fighting Yoda as Count Dooku, because Yoda is also kind of like a gremlin, so I'm thinking about making kind of a mashup parody spoof of that, to kind of connect it together. Also, he gets electrocuted, and as Count Dooku, he's the one shooting the electricity. We also have that guy who was also in Gremlins 1, who apparently died in Gremlins 1, but now it turns out he was only injured, I guess, and he hates the Gremlins. And this guy played in a whole bunch of movies and shows that I loved as well. That's the guy who sold the weapons to the Terminator in Terminator 1. He also sold the newspapers to Picard on the holodeck, and he arrested Cisco when Cisco was in the past. So this guy was in plenty of stuff I like. I think he recently passed away, I think, so rest in peace. So he was in a bunch of good movies. Also those twins from Terminator 2 who also appeared in a bunch of places. I think they were in Lewis and Clark in one episode, and they're always together, and they are the scientists who captured Gizmo in this movie. And I guess they were used in Terminator 2 to make that effect as seamless as possible, instead of using a blue screen, which back then was always not perfect, always kind of leaving a shadow. You can always tell when it's a blue screen, and so that's why I think James Cameron used a bunch of twins in all those scenes. He also used the twin of Linda Hamilton in that scene in which there was a duplicate of Sarah Connor, and there was a deleted scene with a mirror in which they were opening up the Terminator's head, and they actually used her twin for that scene as well. So James Cameron, who is a perfectionist, I guess wanted to use twins to make that effect as seamless as possible. So these same twins appeared in a bunch of places in the 90s, and so it's very neat to have a bunch of all these actors in this movie. And the special effects hold up pretty well till this day. Most of it was practical special effects, puppets, animatronics, all that kind of stuff, which still looks good. And in some scenes you can tell whenever they're using a blue screen or a stop motion animation, stuff like that. Especially with that flying gremlin, you can tell the effect, but that's also interesting on its own, at least for me, someone who enjoys the making of or the behind the scenes of how they actually make special effects for movies. So it's always fun to notice in older movies how they made the special effects. So I can always tell, like in this scene it's stop motion animation, in that shot that's a puppet, that's practical. You can always kind of tell in older movies, and it's part of the fun for me, so I don't feel like it's taking me out of the movie. It's not a serious movie anyway, it's a comedy, so I'm fine even with mistakes, and most of the time it still looks pretty good, and so I wouldn't say it's a bad special effect, and that's why I enjoy even seeing all the so-called defects, all the places you can notice the special effect. That's still kind of interesting to me to see. And most of the movie, because it's practical effects, it still looks good till this day. Like if this movie was made with primitive CGI, it would have looked terrible now. It would have looked like a video game, and so there is a certain charm in all those older movies who actually invested in practical effects which look better than even today's CGI, like that scene of all the gremlins melting and stuff. It looks kind of gory and nasty. It's great. It looks so real because it was made with real stuff, with real materials. And so that's always looking kind of realistic, even better than today's CGI. And watching this movie now makes me wish there is a sequel because I think there's enough stuff, there's enough potential to do at least one more good movie out of this franchise. And I would like to see that same guy, Mr. Clamp, 30 years later now is the president of the United States. That might be funny. Maybe do it as a more direct parody of Donald Trump, because in this movie there are similarities, but it's not really poking fun at Trump. Like this character is not really a villain. Like he's mostly a good guy. He's only kind of naive. He's kind of misunderstanding. Like his company is doing bad things, but he doesn't realize it's a bad thing. And so he's not really a villain. He's more like a clueless guy. So I think it could work really well in a new modern movie and have him appear as the president of the United States, and maybe do kind of a more direct parody of Trump by having this president Clamp instead, and have him deal with a new situation of the Gremlins taking over the country or something like that. Do it in a much bigger scale this time. You know how the scale keeps increasing every movie. Like the first one was in a small town, the second one is in New York, and the third one can be maybe something global even. Something, what would happen if a gremlin falls into the ocean, I wonder? Would it create like 1 trillion gremlins? That might be kind of a fun scenario as a kind of a apocalyptic movie, and having Clamp as the president, who would be kind of clueless and stupid, but with good intentions. That might be funny. I'd also love to see some of the other characters back again. So I would actually love to see a sequel. I love Gremlins 2. I liked the first one as well, but I think the second one, much better special effects. A whole bunch of gremlins turn into monsters because of the genetic lab. So maybe they can continue kind of evolving the gremlins in the next movie, have even bigger variety of gremlins. The second movie ended with that female gremlin kissing Robert Picardo. Some of the gremlins are still alive in the end of the movie apparently. So we also have that gargoyle gremlin who got stuck in concrete. Technically he's still alive inside. Maybe he can break free, and if there's rain he will multiply into 1 million such gremlins, all of them with wings. And so there's so much potential to do so much cool stuff with that idea. Even bigger scale, even more bizarre, even crazier. And so I do think it might be a fun sequel. I don't think it's too late. Probably they will just do a remake or a reboot, which I don't see the point of. I would much rather just see a sequel and see some of the same actors come back. So that's all I had to say. So I was very entertained by this movie again. It's still fun and watchable even as an adult, and that parody of Donald Trump was funny, and it's something I totally missed before as a kid. And there was even a bit toward the end when journalists tried to question him about what's going on in his building, and he kind of lies to the media, and so that kind of reminds me of the whole fake news thing with Trump.
Mr. Clamp, is it true the building's been evacuated?
Sir, is the building on fire? No, that's a false alarm.
So I found that kind of funny. It's almost kind of predicting the future. Maybe I'll do some spoof videos of all of this on my second channel. I'll upload it there. So that's it for now. Let me know what you think and we can discuss it in the comments, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.